BeakerBeat.
It's Monday, September 5th, 2011, and this week's BeakerBeat.
Just a little more time is all we're asking for.
The FDA wants more time to approve new drugs, and the drug makers agree. Confused? We'll explain coming up. Plus, a study funded by one drug maker backfires. See if it will impact future sales. And a new medical device that uses oxygen to kill cancer. All that and more in this week's edition of BeakerBeat, brought to you by Allergan. To learn more about Allergan, visit their company webpage on Beaker.com.
Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of BeakerBeat. I'm Mike Justice. Thanks for tuning in. It is the Labor Day holiday. Hope you're enjoying your day off. Hopefully you're watching this from your home and not from work. If you are, sorry about your luck. I've decided to take the day off as well, although I'm not giving Jeremy any time off. What we're going to do is use some old stand-ups from different shows. We're going to recycle. That way I can relax and have a lemonade. Jeremy, on the other hand, has to work. Here's this week's top story.
60 days. That's how long U.S. regulators and the drug industry want to extend the FDA's deadline to approve or reject new drugs. The extended timeline was put into the proposed deal the FDA made with the prescription drug industry on the fees companies pay for drug reviews. The FDA posted the proposal on its website last week. More on the agreement in a moment. Now, the FDA said it would need an extra 60-day filing date before the clock starts ticking on its 10-month deadline to review new drugs, or 6 months for a priority review. An unnamed source told Reuters the idea of the filing date period would give the FDA time to dive into the complex applications, and in the long run, it might actually lead to shorter time frames for gaining approvals. You heard that right. Adding 2 months to the process will allegedly make it shorter. This sounds familiar.
I'll put it simple. If you're going hard enough left, you'll find yourself turning right.
The FDA faces increased criticism from Congress and the industry for being too slow in approving new products, which they say stifles innovation and job creation. So this plan had better work.
I'm taking an awful risk, Vader. This had better work.
The Prescription Drug User Fee Act, first enacted in 1992, gives the FDA millions of dollars annually to review new products for the U.S. market in exchange for quicker approvals and other promises. Congress must reauthorize the current PDUFA legislation before it expires in September 2012. The FDA's new fee agreement with industry, which would kick in at the beginning of 2013, would be part of the reauthorization legislation. The new 5-year agreement will be put out for public comment.
Oh, Jeremy, I'm laying more bricks than the Great Wall of China. Anyway, tell us what you think about this story or any story that you see in today's show. It's very simple. Click on the orange button below me. A box will pop up. Type in your comment. Send it to me. I promise I'll read and respond to every one of them. And now it's time for you and I to play a game of horse. I'm going to kick your butt.
And when you're done watching BeakerBeat, check out Beaker's blog and see the top 10 medical device venture capital deals in the first half of 2011. Plus, find out what Life Technologies, a cancer-fighting machine, and BMW have in common. Those stories and more on Beaker's blog.
So Forrest Gump famously said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. I got to try one of these before I give it away. Tastes like pork.
I want you to taste both colas, John, and tell me which taste you prefer.
This one.
Well, what do you know, Pepsi?
AstraZeneca's cholesterol drug Crestor failed to beat Pfizer's Lipitor in a head-to-head clinical study. AZ said that while patients on Crestor had a greater reduction in the percentage of plaque clogging their heart arteries than those on Lipitor, the difference was not statistically significant. The company's decision to run a head-to-head clinical study was always viewed as a risk, but it was one AZ had reasonable grounds to think it could win. Past studies have suggested high doses of Crestor are slightly better than high doses of Lipitor at reducing bad LDL cholesterol, and far better at raising good HDL. Some analysts have adjusted their sales projections down for Crestor, but this study isn't deemed too negative. Full results of the so-called Saturn study comparing Crestor and Lipitor will be presented at the annual meeting of the American Heart Association on November 15th.
Okay, time for some quick hits. And Jeremy, guess where you are? On the boards.
Public Citizen wants the FDA to change its rules and allow generic drug makers to update the labeling on their products. The change would address a recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling that generics makers aren't liable for safety warnings on their labels because it duplicates the language on branded versions. Now, patients had sued some generics companies, accusing them of failing to warn about side effects, but current FDA rules don't allow them to change their labeling. Makers of branded meds can update product warnings on their own, but generic makers can't. This seems like a no-brainer, so it will probably take years to fix. Sanofi has struck a deal to sell a generic version of Pfizer's Lipitor in France. This will allow Sanofi's Zentiva generics unit to market copycat Lipitor before the French patent expires in May 2012. Reuters reports that Pfizer gets an incentive for the deal. France has a program that offers branded drug makers a tax break if they allow a generics firm to produce and sell a cheaper version as the patent expires. The program aims to keep drug production and jobs in France. AstraZeneca's new blood thinner Brilinta, sold as Brilique in Europe, got a thumbs up from the European Society of Cardiology. The ESC recommended Brilique over Plavix for patients with acute coronary syndromes at moderate to high risk of heart attack or stroke. This could be a goldmine for AZ, which will be competing with generic Plavix come next year. Researchers have found that vaccinating infants against rotavirus may help protect the unvaccinated children and adults around them. In a CDC study, there were fewer rotavirus-related hospital admissions after the vaccine was introduced in 2008 than from the previous 8 years. Plus, fewer hospitalized rotavirus patients led to lower overall costs. Pfizer inked a 10-year lease agreement with MIT for 180,000 square feet of research space and a planned facility in Kendall Square near Boston. The news follows the drug giant's $100 million expansion announced this summer in San Francisco's Mission Bay. San Francisco-based Oxygen will lay off more than half its remaining staff as the biotech conserves cash for early-stage work. The company says it can't fund a late-stage study of its cancer drug, Zybrestat. Its shares, which traded at $50 just 2 years ago, slid 20% on the news and were trading at under $2.
So yeah, I host a show. It's called BeakerBeat. Maybe you've heard of it?
A Goldman Sachs report forecasts that medical devices growth in emerging markets like China, India, Russia, and Brazil will remain flat at 7.9% through next year. This comes as device firms move to bolster overseas operations to offset slow growth in the U.S. and Western Europe. Concentric Medical, which develops minimally invasive tools for stroke treatment, will be acquired by Stryker for $135 million in cash. The deal is expected to be done by year's end. Bayer Healthcare's imaging unit, Medrad, has purchased Pathway Medical Technologies for an undisclosed amount. And Thermo Fisher Scientific has purchased proteomics sample prep firm Intrinsic Bioprobes, also for an undisclosed amount. Lots of undisclosing going on.
All right, time for our last story of the week. But first, let me finish this beautiful par putt. You just need a deft touch here, Jeremy. Oh, there was a hill there. Dang it.
The medieval philosophers were right. Man is the center of the universe. We stand in the middle of infinity between outer and inner space.
Researchers at Purdue University have created and tested miniature devices that are implanted in tumors to generate oxygen, boosting the killing power of radiation and chemotherapy. The technology is designed to treat solid tumors that are hypoxic at the center, meaning the core contains low oxygen levels. Radiation therapy needs oxygen to be effective, and hypoxic areas are hard to kill. For example, pancreatic and cervical cancers are notoriously hypoxic. The new implantable micro-oxygen generator, as it's called, is an electronic device less than 1 centimeter long that receives ultrasound signals and uses the energy to generate a small voltage to separate oxygen and hydrogen from water. Researchers tested the devices in pancreatic tumors implanted in mice, showing they shrunk tumors faster than tumors without the devices.
Anyway, that's it for this week's edition of BeakerBeat. I'm Mike Justice. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Did you buy margarita mix?
Well, yeah, it's Magnum. He likes to party.
He's from Hawaii, not Mexico.
Sit, Beaker. Sit. Good dog.
Mike, it's been 6 hours. Can I go home now?
What? No, Jeremy, keep it down. We're trying to nap. It's a holiday. It's what you do.
So I can't go home?
No. Go give me another lemonade.